Welcome back to the Rich Nonprofit. This is straight talk for mission-driven leaders. Let's get into it. Today, I want to talk about something that's probably sitting on your plate right now, or about to be, or needs to be strategic planning. And more specifically, your board's well-intentioned but outdated obsession with long-term, high-level planning. If you've ever heard, we need a 3 to 5 year strategic plan to stay competitive, take a pause. And then take a breath. And believe me when I say, your board does not want another strategic plan, at least not the kind you're probably being asked to create. What they really want is clarity, direction, confidence that the nonprofit isn't drifting off. But instead, what most nonprofits produce is this big, long document that gets referenced once, maybe a few times, and then never again. It's a binder full of goals that sound good in a grant application, but don't reflect the day-to-day reality you are leading in. I know this because I've seen behind the curtain for over a decade. I've sat in those board meetings as both a board member and as staff. I've looked through the plans. I've watched executive directors, women with big missions and even bigger hearts, get buried under the weight of a plan that doesn't serve them nor their people. So I'm going to walk you through what typically happens. The board decides it's time for a strategic plan. They hire a consultant or they assign it to the executive director. Everyone spends months in planning mode, retreats, surveys, focus groups, more board retreats. And they emerge with a beautiful document full of pillars, priorities, measurable outcomes, KPIs, one of the terms that you will not hear me use. And 6 months later, nobody can remember what the plan says. Why is that? Because the executive director is still making decisions based on what's urgent. And the board becomes frustrated because they don't see the plan being implemented. And everyone starts talking about revisiting or needing a new plan implemented. A leader doing powerful work, let's say early childhood education, and her board is insisting that they need a 5-year strategic plan, not a framework, not a focused 12-month reset, an entire 5-year roadmap. But what's her reality? Her team is over capacity. Her grant funding has been delayed. She's trying to onboard new people. She's still acting as both executive director and HR manager. And maybe her bookkeeper just quit, so now she's going to be doing that. And maybe one of her major funders is completely restructuring their priorities and holding off on the last bit of funding. When leaders like this reach out to me, they are exhausted. They're trying to carve out more time for strategic planning and thinking, of course, but it's a luxury that they have to justify. How am I supposed to plan 5 years out when I don't even know if our biggest funder will renew in 6 months? So we flip this. Instead of building a 5-year vision, of course we're going to look at long-term and big vision, but we build a 6-month to a year strategy. We ask different questions. I ask different questions. What's leaking energy right now? What is unclear to your team? What is not getting finished that needs to? And what decisions are you as the leader avoiding because you don't have a framework for making them? We stop thinking about pillars and themes and we start thinking about breathing room, about capacity, about restoring focus to what matters the most right now. And this is a complete shift from how they are used to thinking because no one's actually taken care of them before or asked what they need. It's always been this rush, everything is urgent. Let me tell everyone what they need to do. And then it's too much. So with my clients, we map out the current programs and we honestly assess which ones are working, which ones are sort of breaking even, and which ones are just draining resources. And then we create clear decision-making criteria for the next 6 months. And if someone brings her a new opportunity, she now has a framework for saying yes or no instead of just reacting. We build systems for those recurring tasks that are eating up all of her time. Things like monthly reports, donor communications, tasks to her team, and check ins. We identify what is needed so that she can hire out more and delegate and creating a plan for making these things happen. And once we map out that short term clarity, something interesting happens. Your board feels more relaxed. You go to them with confidence. You ask for what you need. They see you leading and they like it. They don't need the 30,000-foot view anymore. They are now seeing leadership in motion. And this is what they need to trust that you are moving and thinking strategically. Yes, you're thinking about day-to-day decisions, of course, that determine whether your nonprofit thrives. But you're also showing them that you can come up with a plan to move the nonprofit long-term and sustainably. And as you continue to do this, your nonprofit moves into a stronger position than it has been in years. Your team knows your priorities, your board trusts your decision making, and you are not having to work as many hours per week because you are now being supported, having your team to delegate things to, and your board to support you. And then you're ready to think about longer term planning from a place of stability and not crisis. 5-year plans are a luxury item these days. They're aspirational documents for a stable environment. And that's not where most nonprofits are right now. I want to be honest about what I see happening in this sector. Over 13 years of education advocacy and strategic planning work, I can tell you that the most effective plans are the ones that can pivot when your community's needs shift. Under our current administration, a federal grant freeze has impacted over 2,600 programs. That included Head Start. It included Medicaid. It included direct service organizations whose entire operations relied on reimbursements that didn't come. I've watched these organizations that had beautiful 5-year plans scramble to figure out how to keep their doors open when their primary funding source disappeared overnight. Meanwhile, the organizations that have survived, and I've seen them grow, are the ones with flexible, responsive strategic frameworks. They know their core mission, of course, but they aren't locked into rigid programming. They have diversified their funding strategies, so losing one source didn't mean shutting their doors. And they have strong relationships with their communities, so they could pivot quickly to meet emerging needs. And they have leaders who can make fast decisions without having to convene a committee and spend weeks or months discussing it. If those federal funds get pulled permanently, and I'm talking about real timely funding that pays your staff, the Urban Institute found that 60 to 80% of nonprofits could not survive it. That's not a policy talking point. That's your payroll, your programs, your entire impact on the line. So tell me, what good is a 5-year plan if your funding is gone in 5 months? This is what I have been telling every client lately. 1 year max, sometimes even less. And not because we're being short-sighted, because we're being smart. We're building strategy that can breathe, that can pivot, that lets you move fast when something shifts. If you agree and have seen this and want to know more, I'd love for you to join my Rich Nonprofit newsletter. It comes out twice a month, and I give you the practical frameworks, what I'm seeing in the industry, and tips for how you can move your nonprofit forward. I bet you have probably felt this tension that I've been describing, the pressure to be strategic while also keeping all the plates spinning in the air, the expectation to show up with vision when what you really need are systems first. And that board member who keeps asking you about the plan while you're trying to figure out how to make payroll. Or maybe you're in the middle of drafting that 5-year plan right now and you're wondering, why does it feel so hollow? The real issue is that strategy only works when it matches your conditions. And right now, most nonprofits are in a volatile, high-stakes environment. That's not fear-mongering, no. That's just leadership context from what I've seen. The funding landscape is shifting. Your community needs are evolving. The policy environment is unpredictable, and I can almost guarantee your staff capacity and you are probably stretched. Traditional strategic planning assumes stability that most nonprofits simply don't have right now. So if you're serious about strategic growth, I would invite you to try this instead. Shrink the timeline, start with 6 to 12 months, focus on stabilization before expansion. Map out what needs to be strengthened, what can be paused, or what can be cut entirely. And get crystal clear on your funding model and your capacity. Build rhythm into your planning cycle, not once every 5 years, but every quarter. What do you need and what does your team need for more flow? And what does this look like day to day? Well, every quarter I encourage my clients to spend a few hours asking themselves, what's working that we should do more of? And what's not working that we should probably stop? What can we systematize to free up your time as the leader? And what are some ways that we can be building for future opportunities? That's it. It doesn't need to be huge. It just needs to be strategic. And this consistent strategic thinking that keeps you responsive to your community and realistic about your capacity, that's what leadership and growth looks like. And your board will thank you, because what I've seen is when you lead clearly, they stop micromanaging. When you stop spinning in circles, they stop trying to control every decision. When you show up grounded and present, they begin trusting you more and with bigger decisions. What they really want isn't the document. It's not the timeline. It's the leadership. They want to see someone who is thinking strategically about the organization's future. They want to trust that decisions are being made with intention, not just reaction. They want to feel confident that the organization will still be there next year. And you can give them that with your strategic thinking and planning. You can show up to board meetings with clear priorities for the next quarter and share the criteria that you've been using if they ask to make these decisions. Give them data that matters to them. They don't need to know every metric that you track, but the ones that indicate that you are moving forward and moving the organization forward as well. Ask them for input on specific decisions where their expertise can help. That's why they are there, to support you. But don't ask them to manage your strategy. That's your job. If you're feeling the pull to shift how you plan and lead, this is your permission slip. If your board is pressuring you for a 5-year plan, you could tell them, I'd love to build a comprehensive plan with you. But before we map out 5 years, let's spend 6 months building the foundation that will make any long-term plan successful. Here's what I'm thinking. And then present your short-term strategy framework. Show them how you'll track the progress. Demonstrate strategic leadership in real time. And I know they will be more impressed by a leader who can navigate uncertainty than one who produces a beautiful document that doesn't reflect reality. You deserve more than a plan that sits on a shelf. You deserve a strategic framework that lets you lead with clarity and confidence, even when everything else around you feels uncertain. Thank you for joining me today. I will see you next time on The Rich Nonprofit.